In 1946, the newly formed United Nations existed as a set of ideas on paper, but it lacked a physical center. To function, the world's first global organization needed its own territory. The founders initially envisioned building a world city, a sprawling, independent capital with enough land to prevent the logistical friction of the previous two world wars. This photograph of an early session shows the volume of delegates that required permanent housing and office space. That dream quickly hit a wall. Faced with mounting budget deficits and the impossibility of securing a massive tract of land in a major city, the organization was forced to downsize the entire plan. They eventually settled on a donation from the Rockefeller family, an 18-acre plot on the edge of Manhattan's East River. This was a diminutive site for a global capital, hemmed in by the city's existing urban grid. This created a significant spatial paradox. The architects were now tasked with fitting the administrative headquarters of every nation on Earth into a tiny, claustrophobic Manhattan footprint. The design phase carried its own political risks. Choosing a single architect from one member country could be seen as national favoritism, potentially alienating the very nations the UN was trying to unite. The UN solution was to form a board of design consultants. They bypassed a standard competition and instead assembled a multinational team of 10 leading architects, many of whom were professional rivals. Director of Planning Wallace K. Harrison was the man responsible for coordinating this group. He had to find a path forward while managing a chaotic volume of conflicting diagrams and competing architectural philosophies. By locking these architects in a shared drafting room, the UN essentially turned the design process into an experiment. Their daily meetings would determine whether a group of rivals could actually collaborate on a single functional result. Between February and June 1947, the drafting room was a site of intense friction, producing at least 45 different variations for the headquarters. Two primary visions emerged. One came from the Swiss-French architect Le Corbusier, a titan of modernist design, and the other from Brazil's Oscar Niemeyer, who used physical models to test how the buildings would interact with the limited ground space. Le Corbusier's Project 23 proposed a single, massive block housing the assembly and council chambers, occupying almost the entire 18-acre plot. Niemeyer's Project 32 took the opposite approach, dividing the complex into a low-rise horizontal block and a distinct vertical office tower. Niemeyer's vertical layout was eventually chosen for a purely practical reason. Building upward was the only mathematical way to fit the required interior volume onto the site without overcrowding the ground level. The final design became a hybrid. While they used Niemeyer's vertical layout, the buildings were heavily influenced by Le Corbusier's monolithic style. The tallest result was the 39-story Secretariat building. Completed in 1950, it relied on a skeletal steel grid to support its narrow, vertical profile. The Secretariat featured a radical innovation: curtain walls. Instead of solid stone, the east and west facades were thousands of glass panes suspended within a metal grid, creating an entirely transparent surface. This airy glass stood in direct contrast to the north and south ends of the tower, clad in solid Vermont marble and containing no windows. To make this design functional, the architects hid the engineering away, using floors 6, 16, and 28 for mechanical equipment, and building a 3-story, 1,500-car parking garage deep beneath the building. This design defined the international style. It proved that modernist architecture wasn't just an aesthetic choice, but an engineering solution to extreme physical constraints. By October 1952, the headquarters was finished. The 39-story Secretariat and the domed General Assembly stood as the centerpiece of the East River waterfront. While the site is physically in New York, it operates under a legal concept called extraterritoriality. Through a treaty with the U.S. government, these 18 acres are under the sole administration of the UN. This diagram shows a direct result of that legal independence. The complex uses water pumped directly from the East River to cool its mechanical systems, a practice that is actually illegal under New York City regulations. By operating outside local laws to harness the river, the UN achieved a small-scale version of its original goal, an independent, self-sustaining micronation functioning within a host city. Inside the complex, the architecture focuses entirely on international scale. This view of the General Assembly shows the circular symmetry designed to place every delegate under the gaze of a single, unified world emblem. But the order we see here is not the result of a single, uncompromised vision. It is the product of intense debate and the reconciliation of conflicting architectural philosophies. The decision to use glass walls instead of a stone fortress carried its own symbolic weight. It represented a post-war promise that global diplomacy would be conducted with transparency and openness. Ultimately, the headquarters serves as evidence for the UN's own mission. It shows that while international cooperation requires sacrifices of individual ego, those compromises are capable of producing a lasting, functional space for global diplomacy.